Have you ever felt completely drained? Like someone's just sucking the energy right out of you, taking your time, your stuff, like you're walking down a road, but there aren't any signs.
Yeah, that feeling of being lost in a relationship, not knowing where you stand. It's a good way to describe what happens when we don't have good boundaries.
Right. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're taking a look at this book by Alba Cardalda called Cómo mandar a la mierda de forma educada.
Wow, that title.
I know, right? It definitely grabs your attention. But actually, it's all about learning how to say no. Not in a mean way, of course, more like gracefully. Protecting yourself and your relationships in the long run.
It is about being assertive, but in a way that helps you connect better, not push people away. Cadalda really breaks down why boundaries are so important. Like, what are they? How do they work? And how do we set them without turning into, like, a boundary-obsessed monster?
Exactly. So today, we're going to figure out why these limits are so important. Like, why do we even need them? We'll also talk about all the different kinds of boundaries, from physical space to, like, emotional stuff, and how to communicate them clearly and respectfully. We're even going to tackle some of those myths that float around, like that whole unconditional love means no boundaries thing, which, by the way, is not true at all.
And we'll also touch on how our culture, where we come from and what we've been taught, can make it harder to set those boundaries in the first place.
It's going to be a good one. So let's start with the basics. Why are boundaries so important? Cardalda talks about relationships without boundaries being like a road without signs. What do you think she means by that?
Well, it's like, imagine driving down a road with no speed limit signs, no lane markings, no stoplights. It'd be chaos. Super dangerous, too. And relationships without boundaries are kind of like that. Nobody knows the rules. What's okay? What's not okay? How do we treat each other? And when there's no clarity, well, people get hurt. Feelings get hurt. Misunderstandings happen. And it just creates a lot of unnecessary stress.
Right. So these boundaries are like the traffic signals of our relationships. They help us stay in our lanes, so to speak, and avoid those emotional collisions.
Exactly. They tell us when to slow down, when to stop, and when it's okay to go. And that goes for both physical space and our emotions. They protect our personal space, our stuff, but also our feelings and our values.
Now, I know a lot of people think setting boundaries is kind of selfish. Like you're only thinking about yourself and not about the other person. What's Cardalda's take on that?
She actually flips that idea on its head.
Yeah.
She says that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's actually an act of self-love. And get this, it's also a way of respecting other people.
Interesting. How so?
Well, when we set boundaries, we're taking responsibility for our own well-being. We're saying, hey, this is what I need to be happy and healthy.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we're actually preventing resentment from building up, which can really damage relationships in the long run.
Yeah.
It's much better to be upfront about our needs than to, bottle everything up and then explode later on.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like preventing a pressure cooker from blowing up.
Exactly.
Okay, so if boundaries are so good for us in our relationships, why is it so hard to actually set them?
Well, I think it's because we've been fed a lot of, those romantic fairy tales about love being unconditional. Like, you're supposed to accept everything about the other person, no matter what, and any kind of boundary is seen as a lack of trust or love. It's like, if you really love me, you wouldn't need to set boundaries.
It's such a harmful idea.
Totally. And it makes people feel guilty for wanting to protect themselves. But here's the thing. Learning to set boundaries is a skill. Like any skill, it takes practice and effort. And the first step is recognizing how we feel. Like, what situations make us uncomfortable? What behaviors make us feel disrespected? And then we need to learn how to communicate those feelings clearly and respectfully.
It's like learning a new language, the language of healthy relationships.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we know why boundaries are important, but what do they actually look like? Cardalda talks about 6 main types of boundaries, right? Let's break those down.
Absolutely. So first up, we have physical boundaries. These are all about our personal space, our bodies, and our stuff.
Right, like when someone gets too close for comfort or hugs you when you don't want to be hugged.
Exactly. It's also about respecting our belongings, like not borrowing things without asking or going through someone's stuff without permission. It's about respecting that physical space.
Makes sense. What's next?
Emotional boundaries. This one's all about our feelings. It's about how we share our feelings, with whom, and how much. It also protects us from emotional manipulation and invalidation.
So like when someone tries to guilt trip you or make you feel bad for having certain feelings.
Yep. Or when someone constantly dumps their emotional baggage on you without asking if you're even okay with it. Or when they try to minimize your feelings, telling you you're overreacting. Those are all examples of emotional boundaries being crossed.
It's like having a shield around your heart, protecting it from those emotional darts.
Exactly. Then we have sexual boundaries. These are super important and all about consent and respect in any sexual situation.
So making sure everyone feels comfortable and safe and that everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. It's about respecting each other's limits and communicating clearly what you're okay with and what you're not okay with.
Okay, got it. What about time boundaries? I think this is one a lot of people struggle with.
Oh, for sure. Time boundaries are about how we manage our time and who has access to it. It's about setting limits on how much time we give to others and making sure we have enough time for ourselves.
Yeah, like when your boss expects you to be available 24/7 or when friends constantly want to hang out, even when you have other plans.
Exactly. It's about saying no to things and protecting our time for the things that are important to us.
Okay, so next up is material boundaries. What are those about?
Those are about our stuff, our possessions, our money, our resources. It's about setting limits on how much we share and making sure we're not being taken advantage of.
So like someone constantly borrowing money and never paying you back.
That's one example. Or using your things without asking and then returning them damaged.
Yeah.
Or constantly expecting you to, foot the bill. It's about respecting what belongs to others.
Makes sense. And finally, we have psychological boundaries. What are those all about?
Psychological boundaries are a bit more subtle, but they're just as important. They're about our thoughts, our belief, our values, and opinions.
So like someone trying to pressure you into believing something you don't agree with.
Exactly. Or someone constantly criticizing your ideas or telling you you're wrong all the time. It's about respecting each other's right to think for themselves.
Okay, wow, that's a lot to think about. With so many different types of boundaries, how do we even figure out where to start? Like, where do we need to set better boundaries?
Cardalda suggests doing a little reflection exercise.
Yeah.
She says to think back to situations where you felt uncomfortable, used, or disrespected. These moments can really point to where your boundaries might be weak or even non-existent.
It's like looking for clues, right? Those
Something.
little red flags that tell you, hey, something's not right here.
Exactly. And it might be helpful to keep track of those moments, maybe even write them down. It helps you see patterns and figure out what your limits really are.
So knowing when to say no is important, but how do we actually say it? How do we establish these boundaries assertively without, starting World War III?
It's all about communication,
Mm.
but not just any communication. It's about assertive communication.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It means being clear, direct, and respectful. It's about expressing your needs and limits without being passive-aggressive or aggressive-aggressive. You're not letting people walk all over you, but you're not attacking them either.
It's like finding that sweet spot, right?
Exactly.
So what are some, practical steps we can take to start setting boundaries more assertively?
First, you got to figure out what's bothering you. Like what specific situations or behaviors are crossing your lines. Once you're clear on that, it's time to communicate. And Cardalda suggests using I statements.
Oh, like, I feel uncomfortable when, oh, I would prefer it if I need some space to.
You got it. It helps to focus on your own feelings and needs without blaming the other person. And it can be helpful to try to understand their perspective too. Like, why might they be doing what they're doing?
Not that we have to agree with them or excuse their behavior, but it's helpful to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's about empathy, but not at the expense of your own needs. Your boundaries are non-negotiable when it comes to your well-being. It's also important to choose the right time and place to have these conversations. A calm, private setting is much better than, trying to have a serious conversation in the middle of a crowded restaurant.
Right. Don't try to set boundaries when you're hangry.
Good advice.
Yeah.
And if you think the other person might resist, it can be helpful to explain why this boundary is important to you. Like, what's the reasoning behind it?
It's like giving them a little peek behind the curtain, showing them what's going on inside your world.
Exactly. And here's another tip. Start small. If you're not used to setting boundaries, practice saying no to little things first. It helps build your no muscle.
Like saying no to that extra slice of cake even though you really want it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And once you set a boundary, be consistent. Don't give in sometimes and hold firm other times. It just confuses people.
It's like having a speed limit that changes every day. Nobody knows how fast they're allowed to go.
Exactly. And if someone keeps pushing your boundaries, even after you've been clear, just calmly and firmly repeat your limit. You don't need to get into a big argument. Just say, I've already said that I'm not comfortable with that. And remember, if someone consistently disrespects your boundaries, you might need to rethink that relationship. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, Some relationships just aren't healthy.
Wow, that's really powerful. So setting boundaries is all about creating those clear lines of communication and respect in our relationships.
Absolutely. It's about teaching people how to treat us by showing them what we will and won't accept.
Okay, now let's talk about those pesky myths about boundaries, like the ones that make us feel guilty for even thinking about setting them. Cardalda tackles those head on, right?
Oh, yeah, she does. Because these myths are often what stop us from setting boundaries in the first place.
So let's bust some myths. What's the first one?
One of the biggest myths is that setting boundaries is selfish.
I've definitely heard that one before.
But the truth is, true selfishness is expecting everyone else to bend over backwards for you while you give nothing in return. Setting boundaries is actually about taking care of yourself so that you can be a good partner, friend, or family member.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first before helping others on the plane.
Exactly. Another big myth is that real love is unconditional, with no limits whatsoever.
Ah, yes, the if you truly loved me argument.
Exactly. But unconditional love doesn't mean you have to accept being treated badly. In fact, healthy love needs boundaries to survive. They protect everyone involved. It's like having a fence around a garden. It keeps the good stuff in and the bad stuff out.
So loving someone doesn't mean you have to be a doormat.
Exactly. And another myth is that setting boundaries means you don't trust the other person or that you're rejecting them.
Ugh, that one's so frustrating.
It is, but it's simply not true. Boundaries are actually a sign of respect. They show that you care enough about the relationship to be honest about your needs and limits. It creates a safe space for everyone to be themselves.
So it's not about building walls, it's about creating healthy, sustainable connections.
Exactly. And the last myth is that setting boundaries is easy. Like you just say no, that's it. But it's not always that simple. For some people, it's a process. It takes practice and courage, especially if you weren't taught how to do it growing up.
It's like learning a new dance. It takes time and effort to get the steps right.
Yeah, good analogy. And sometimes you might mess up or feel awkward, but that's okay. It's all part of the learning process. And the more you practice, the easier it gets. The important thing is to keep challenging those old, unhelpful beliefs about boundaries. They can really sabotage our relationships.
And speaking of sabotage, I think it's also important to talk about those limiting beliefs we have about ourselves that can make setting boundaries even harder.
Right. Those internal voices that tell us we're not good enough, not worthy enough, not deserving enough to have boundaries. Like, I have to put everyone else's needs before my own.
Or it's selfish to think about myself.
Exactly. Yeah. And if I say no, they won't love me anymore. And I have to sacrifice everything for the people I love. These beliefs can really hold us back from creating healthy relationships.
So it's not just about those external messages we get, it's about those internal messages too, the ones we tell ourselves.
Exactly. And sometimes those are the hardest ones to challenge. But it's important to remember that we deserve to have boundaries.
Yeah.
We deserve to be treated with respect. And by setting boundaries, we're not only taking care of ourselves, but we're also teaching others how to treat us.
Now, Cardalda also talks about how our culture can influence how we view boundaries, like how our upbringing and the society we live in can affect our ability to set limits. What are some of the things she points out?
Well, she talks about how in some cultures, putting the group's needs before your own is really emphasized. And this can make it really hard to assert yourself or say no.
Right, it's like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one.
Exactly. And sometimes gender roles play a part too. In some cultures, it's still expected that women should be more accommodating and less assertive than men. So even if they want to set boundaries, they might be afraid of being seen as bossy or selfish.
It's like there's this invisible pressure to conform to those traditional roles.
Yeah, and it can be hard to break free from those expectations. And then there's the whole self-sacrifice is good message that gets passed down through generations.
Yes. Like you have to be a martyr to be a good person.
It can feel that way sometimes. And that can really make it hard to prioritize your own needs and well-being. Plus, not everyone gets taught about emotional intelligence and communication skills growing up, so they might not even know how to set boundaries in a healthy way.
Yeah, it's like we're thrown into this world of relationships without a proper instruction manual.
Exactly. And then you throw in all the distractions of modern life, social media, technology, constantly being connected. And it's no wonder people struggle with boundaries. So yeah, there are a lot of cultural factors that play a role in how we view boundaries.
So it's like we're swimming in this ocean of cultural norms, and sometimes we need to consciously decide to swim against the current.
I like that analogy. It's about becoming aware of those influences and then making choices that align with our own values and needs.
Okay, so let's talk about guilt, because let's be real. A lot of us feel guilty when we try to set boundaries, even when we know they're necessary. Any advice on dealing with that?
Oh yeah, guilt is a big one, especially if you've been raised to put everyone else's needs before your own. But here's the thing. Feeling guilty doesn't necessarily mean you've done something wrong. It might just be your brain's way of reacting to change. Like, hey, we've never done this before. This feels weird.
So it's like those alarm bells going off, but they're not necessarily signaling danger.
Right. And it's important to remember that you're not responsible for other people's emotions. They might not be happy about your boundaries, but that's okay. You're allowed to take care of yourself.
It's like when you set a boundary with a kid. They might throw a tantrum, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have set the boundary in the first place.
Perfect example. And it's important to be kind to yourself. Like, don't beat yourself up for feeling guilty. Just acknowledge the feeling and then remind yourself why you set the boundary in the first place. And try to use clear and respectful language when you're communicating your boundaries. That can help minimize conflict and make you feel more confident.
So instead of saying, oh, I'm so sorry, but try something like, I understand you're disappointed, but I can't do that right now.
Exactly. Be firm but kind.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of boundaries, what are the key takeaways you think our listeners should remember?
Well, first and foremost, boundaries are crucial for healthy relationships. They're not about being mean or pushing people away, but about creating a space of respect and understanding. Remember the 6 types of boundaries: physical, emotional, sexual, time, material, and psychological. And don't buy into those myths about boundaries being selfish or a sign of a lack of love. Those are just old, unhelpful ideas that keep us stuck.
Right. Healthy love needs boundaries to flourish.
Exactly. And remember, setting boundaries takes practice. You're not going to get it perfect right away. But the more you practice, the easier it becomes.
Like anything worth doing, right?
Absolutely. And don't forget to challenge those limiting beliefs that are holding you back. You deserve to have boundaries. You deserve to be treated with respect.
Yes. So to everyone listening, think about one area in your life where you could benefit from a clearer boundary. It could be with your partner, a friend, a family member, or even at work. And use what we talked about today to start creating that boundary. Remember, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's actually the foundation for stronger, healthier, and more fulfilling relationships.
And remember, this is just the beginning. There's always more to learn about ourselves and how we relate to others.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of boundaries. It's been a great conversation. And be sure to tune in next time for another deep dive into more fascinating topics that can help you live a happier, healthier, and more connected